Thank you to all of those that are attending our budget meeting this evening. It's our regular board meeting, which is including our budget this evening. So the Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations. My apologies, Edith, I should have alluded. On whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. Just before we start with the meeting, as our usual practices, we start by introducing the head table. So, Melanie, if we can start with you this evening, please.
Hi, I'm Melanie Houston. I'm the president of the RN Specialists Association.
Joe Rose, president, Keep 382. And all residents.
Tom Ferris, trustee.
Diane McNally, trustee.
Michael McAvoy, trustee.
Edith Loring Mutunda, trustee.
Vicki Hadley, recording secretary.
George Ambo, secretary treasurer.
Peg Orchin, trustee.
John Gateman, superintendent of schools.
Bev Horsman, trustee. Catherine Alpha, trustee.
Deborah Noor, trustee.
Elaine Leonard, trustee.
Tara Erke, president, Greater Victoria Teachers Association.
Bob Bird, you keep that chair.
Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I do have two additions to our speakers list under community presentations. And Diane, I'll ask for your addition as well. We have Rob Painter, who will be speaking about district strategic planning and funding for psychometric testing for students, and followed by John Bird speaking on politics in the school system. Are there any further additions to the agenda? Diane?
It's not an agenda, Chair. It's the motion to bury the agenda by moving F5 to standalone item after D1. Otherwise, it will be removed.
I believe we have to deal with the tabled motion from the February meeting. Trustee McNally?
Pardon me?
We have to deal with the tabled motion that was put forward a couple months ago and tabled to this motion.
And that would be which
motion, Chair? What are you referring to? I'm lost here.
D2A, under Secretary Treasurer's report.
Okay. Chair, would it be possible to move F5 to after item 8 here?
To F5 to after which?
After the recommended motion A.
So you want to move F5 to F1?
No, I'm not making myself clear. I'm sorry. I want to move F5 to D2A, and it would be the new B, and the current B would then be C.
The only reason that the recommended motion that is at D2A is because it was tabled to this point. You could move F5 to F1, but you couldn't move it before the annual budget bylaw.
I could or could not move it before the annual budget bylaw. I'm sorry.
You would have to, the only opportunity to move it, Trustee McNally, would be from where it sits presently at F5 to F1. They're taking it over.
Chair, but it's moot if it's not before.
I appreciate that, Trustee.
I was just going to say on the point of mootness, I don't agree, because if history is any example, I strongly suspect, unless I'm wrong, that we will not get a third reading on the budget tonight. Perhaps I could be wrong. I don't think we will likely won't. I suspect, and if that's the case, then the budget is still a live issue by the time we get to F5 or F1 or whatever it is. So
that's right.
So I think the mootness issue is unlikely to be at this point tonight, anyways, moot.
Are there any further I'll entertain your query, Tara, but I'm not sure if I will be able to do anything with it.
I'm not trying to change the agenda, it's just that Kirk is ill and we have a replacement for him. Barbara
You have a replacement?
do.
All right, and who's replacing Kirk, and I'm sorry who's ill?
Barbara McCauley.
Oh, hi, Barbara. I know her. Thank you. Trustee Lauren Kahunga.
I just wanted to respond to Trustee McAvoy's speculation that it may not be all 3 readings. We don't know that until we go through the process.
Well, I guess the media reported incorrectly. Anyways, we will proceed. Do I have a mover to?
So moved.
Okay, a seconder?
I want to add a report under trustees' reports.
I apologize, Trustee Horsman. I do have a note. Trustee Horsman will be making a report under trustee report at 8:05. And Deborah Nor?
And me as well. Sure.
Thank you. So that's
Barry Dawes report from trustee McNowan.
Edith. Diane. So I have trustee Horsman, trustee Nor, trustee McAvoy, trustee Lori Kahunga, and trustee, oh, I thought you, okay, not trustee Lauren Kahunga, but trustee McNally? Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Any further additions or to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the agenda as amended? Thank you. We now move to A2, approval of the minutes of March 26, 2012, March 28, 2012 special board budget minutes, and the approval of the April 4, 2012 special board budget minutes. I'll give you just a moment to peruse those. Are there any errors, omissions, or deletions that need to be made to the minutes? No? If not, can we have someone move approval of the minutes for the 3 meetings? Seconder? All those in favor? Thank you. So moved and carried. Do we have any business arising from the minutes? No? Seeing none, we'll move now on to our community presentations. Considering this is our budget discussion, we will be monitoring our 5 minutes per presentation, and I appreciate if our presenters would respect that. If you do have paper that you can leave behind or something with an email that we can look at after, that would be great. It would have been different if we were discussing having presentations on budget items. Having said that, these are items that we can look at after the fact if necessary. So I'd first like to call upon Tara, please.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, and although I am listed down to discuss Bill 22, and that will be the subject of most of my 5 minutes, I'd actually like to begin by pointing out that I think Bill 22 and the budget are intimately linked. Tonight you'll be looking at 2 questions. One is your disposition on a piece of legislation, and the other is your disposition on a budget which is inadequate to meet the needs of students in this district. And the reason I say that they're linked is because, in fact, what Bill 22 does, one of the many things it does, is enable boards to provide services with less money. Back in 2002, Bill 28 was enacted. We now know from a court ruling, and it's just a couple of short days after the 1-year anniversary of that court ruling, that it was unconstitutional legislation. But to be frank, the purpose of Bill 28 primarily was to save the government money. Bill 28 eliminated class size limits and class composition limits from collective agreements, and in doing so, as the judge herself acknowledged, the ministry could reduce its budget to boards by $275 million a year. In today's dollars, that would be about $330 million a year. Bill 22 similarly has significant financial implications, and what it does is it enables school boards to, in fact, meet the ever-declining budgets that they have to deal with because inflationary pressures are not being met, because things like MSP premiums are going up and boards are not provided additional funding. Pension contributions have gone up and boards have not been provided additional funding. And so what Bill 22 does, one of the many things it does, is give you an out. And so in that respect, Bill 22 and the budget are connected, because Bill 22 is a piece of enabling legislation to allow boards to do less with less, I'll call it. There's three ways that this happens. The first and most obvious is that Bill 22 not only enables larger classes, but encourages larger classes. And now that we've all had the opportunity to see the regulation that goes along with the legislation, it's not very much math to figure out that if there are 90 students in grade 8 at a particular school, it is in fact cheaper to have 2 classes of 45 rather than 3 classes of 30. This is true for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the additional salary envisioned by the regulation is only 9/10 of the teacher's salary, so immediately there's 1 month savings. But in addition, there's no factoring in for the cost of benefits or overhead that would take place with having that 3rd class. So this bill and its regulations, again, not only enable large classes, but actually encourage large classes where financial restrictions are a factor. This bill is likely to lead to fewer teachers. It enables contracting out of teacher work. And again, by enabling larger classes, it will encourage models that rely on fewer certified teachers in the classroom. Finally, the bill enables the more easy firing and layoff of teachers. Again, a component designed to enable boards to reduce their teaching staff and to do less with less. Of course, this board, like so many others, faces a structural deficit, and therefore the motivation for you to take advantage of these enabling factors will be significant.
Tara, just to let you know, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I stand here representing 1,500 teachers. I speak to you on their behalf. We have been united and strong in our opposition to Bill 22. We're concerned about the impact on public education. We're concerned on the impact on class size. We're concerned about the impact on the failure to even report to the public complete class size and class composition information, reducing accountability. We're concerned about the unconstitutionality of the retraction of Bill 28 and then the immediate reenactment of it. And finally, we're concerned about the phony mediation process, which is biased towards the employer and will not resolve any of the underlying issues or any of the concerns that teachers have brought forward.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I'd now like to call upon Keely Roden, Social Justice Committee Chair, GBT, on Bill 22. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and colleagues. My name is Keely Roden, and I'm speaking to you tonight as a relatively new teacher with over 25 years remaining in this profession. I've learned a lot in the first few years of my career. There are some aspects of teaching that are just as wonderful and rewarding as I imagined they would be, and there are some that are very different and very challenging. This year has been a very challenging year. This year I've learned that there is a huge disconnect between the respect and admiration I've always had for my teachers and the lack of respect that teachers often feel. Bill 22 is the ultimate expression of disrespect for our profession, for our students, and for public education. It is quite simply an attack on the same system that we are all here to defend and uphold. If you're not convinced of the negative long-term impacts this bill could have on public education, you need only look to the South. American teachers, board members, and parents didn't think that a small collection of changes could have that great an impact, but they were wrong. Over time, legislation much like Bill 22 eroded the protections for public education and paved the way for a privatized system. When asked what they could have done to change this outcome, teachers in the US have said, in hindsight, that they should have fought harder the very first time they saw this type of legislation. Legislation like Bill 22. Legislation that strips the rights of teachers to advocate for ourselves and for our students. But advocating for our rights is crucial to the quality of public education. Teachers in Finland are consistently at the top of the list for teacher job satisfaction, whereas America is consistently at the bottom. The same pattern holds for literacy rates and student achievement. This is not a coincidence. Teachers work harder and with more joy when they have professional autonomy and respect. And as a result, our students benefit. It is clear that Bill 22 is wrong for teachers, it's wrong for students, and it's wrong for education. As our Board of Trustees, it is your ethical and moral obligation to speak out against this legislation. It's sometimes difficult to speak out, especially if it is controversial or political, but I teach my students, and I will teach my children, that what is right is not always what is popular. I want my children to have the same quality of education that I benefited from, and I do not want to spend the next 25 years of my career fighting to get back the rights that I had this year. I ask you, please, I urge you, stand up for public education and call for the repeal of Bill 22. Thank you.
Barbara McCauley, Contract Chair for its GVTA. Thank you.
Apologies for the clerk. This is being drafted 20 minutes before I came here, so if I'm a little halting, it's because I'm trying to read my editing marks here. And I feel like a bookend to you because I'm turning 60 next year, and I'm feeling that I have not so much to lose and not so much to gain from this because I'm on the way out. However, I feel doubly passionate about this. This is a huge issue. I've been through different job actions before. This is not the same. I'm speaking in support of the motion that the board write a letter to Minister Abbott requesting a repeal of Bill 22. In Greek mythology, gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus exerted capricious powers, rewarding or punishing mortals as they saw fit. The disproportionate clout of the BC government wields a parallel ability to thwart, radically alter, and overridingly threaten teachers and, by extension, students. The clustering of disparate issues in one bill is baffling, confounding to boards, no doubt, and contentious in the attacks that it makes on teachers' past-won rights. In teaching critical thinking, we ask students not only to examine issues, but to consider their context. The context of a coming election, of past negotiations with other unions, and of historical friction with educators compromises goodwill on the part of our employers and the government. The backdrop of a tainted offering in the form of a likely biased mediator suggesting a predictable outcome leads us to be skeptical, if not cynical. Internationally, the context of cautionary tales offers ripe non-examples of progressive policy, dismantled educational systems, devalued programs, and demoralized teachers. Having friends and relatives who work in schools in the United States, England, and Italy, I have received warnings about disastrous reforms. Yes, our system of education should be dynamic, not static, but why can we not instead enhance our already respected system by learning from models of success such as in Finland? The huge issue regarding students with designations has been explored here before. But just because you hear it over and over again doesn't mean it's not true. Please be reminded that a designation provides, or at least used to provide, a mechanism for ensuring rights to services and conditions for learning, not for removing rights. As regards class size, think of the context of our present day composition. When I started teaching in 1978, most of the kids looked pretty much alike. They mostly had mums and dads, the mums were mostly at home, the kids went home for lunch. That's not who I teach now. I did the one about that one, but I'll stop right there. Significant cutbacks to funding over the years is an indication in part of the decline of the priority education has been given. Fractions of the amount of money being taken away are now being touted as substantial new funding. Anyone who has worked within schools for any length of time knows what the losses to students' learning looks like now. And I'm picturing their faces. I don't know about other people, but when I think of these issues, I'm seeing the faces of children I know. I believe that a large part of this public school mandate is socialization and cultivating citizenship. A crucial component of learning is relationship. I spend the first weeks in the fall cultivating an atmosphere of trust. I try to embody a code of ethics by which we will spend the year together. Once this is established, students engage, they show pride, they take willing risks, and they encourage one another. This same working atmosphere is essential for teachers in your school district. And I have to say, I feel really disrespected when people don't look at me when I speak. And I've been noticing this when I come to board meetings, and I don't know if that's the protocol, but I feel that it's a sign of respect to look at people.
Got about 15 seconds for things.
I'm almost there. So this same working atmosphere is essential for teachers in order to attain optimum performance and to sustain a high level of commitment. We absolutely rely on your positive relationship with us in order for this to happen. Please consider this request.
I would now like to call upon Rob Painter, who will be discussing district strategic planning and funding for psychometric testing for students.
And I would like to say that it's pretty clear that we're just touching the surface on Bill 22, so with that, shifting in another direction, I'll take it away as it is. So organizational planning. It's the process through which an organization's vision, principles, goals, objectives, and strategies to achieve them can be clearly defined and agreed upon. Within the context of School District 61, this planning would provide for the means to tie the allocation of human and capital resources directly to identified educational objectives and strategies. Now, at present, it's my sense that a great number of the necessary elements required to undertake strategic planning are already in place within the district. And in this regard, the process may be limited to simply bringing these disparate pieces together within a common framework. There are, however, a number of recent examples where effort can be taken to better clarify how resources are allocated. Some of these include the challenged strategic facilities plan created by Stantec last year. The absence, it was identified at the last meeting, of an organizational staffing chart that could demonstrate how personnel changes at headquarters are still able to meet administrative responsibilities. Another one is the absence of a clearly articulated longer-term vision of the board, for the Board of Education and the district more generally. Now, a well-crafted strategic plan allows an organization to adjust resources and strategies to still meet its goals in light of changes, both internal and external, through the use of a variety of approaches, including risk assessment. Risk assessment serves to identify issues that may be problems in the future and provide a format for possible mitigation. It also allows for change management, ensuring that in the face of external pressures, I can think of a couple, focus can be maintained on overall objectives and enable continued attention to the highest priorities when cost containment occurs. The discussion we will hear tonight about possible uses of the approximately $350,000 surplus from this past school year, current school year, is a prime example of where strategic planning would be of use. Rather than debating the merits of a range of worthwhile issues that may or may not result in advancement towards longer-term priorities, effective strategic planning would enable the board to have established priorities in place and allocate the resources accordingly. I would also observe that the ongoing challenge of addressing the district's structural deficit is a worthwhile issue for longer-term consideration. Now, it's understanding that planning is currently undertaken through the district achievement contract. However, this methodology limits efforts to a 3-year planning horizon, which in practical terms falls into an operational rather than strategic approach. You're basically getting things done on right here and now rather than projecting outwards. It leaves the district in a reactive rather than proactive stance. A 5 to 10 year plan window enables the district to identify its longer-term vision, consider the more gradual shifts in demographics and the impacts on capital infrastructure, and then employ the mechanism of the achievement contract to identify more operational level strategies aimed at progressing towards overall objectives. So I'd like to close this part by observing that in the case of recent assessments of other school districts, specifically the 2010 report on SD 35 in Langley by the Office of the Auditor General for BC, and the 2010 review of the Vancouver School Board undertaken by the Office of the Comptroller General of the Ministry of Finance. And these are, for me, I'm a bureaucrat, so these are two offices that strike fear in my heart. When they say things, I listen. In both cases, both districts were encouraged to move to a 5 to 10 year strategic planning horizon that tied specifically human and financial resource planning to the achievement of educational outcomes. The Office of the Comptroller General concluded that a 5 to 10 year planning horizon would provide increased stability to districts and transparency to the public. It also confirmed that the lack of long-term vision and plan has led to short-term decisions that have not served, in this case, the Vancouver School Board well. Although longer-term planning is challenging, in times of uncertainty, it becomes more important to do so then. My second point, and I can keep this one short, is with regards to the allocation of the $350,000. So, in the absence of strategic planning, I would like to post my support for the allocation of these resources to added psychometric testing, particularly in the case of early intervention, along with the associated support requirements for these kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
I'd like to now call upon John Byrne, who will be speaking in regards to politics in the school system. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I start the speech, sometimes you get some unusual opportunities, and I'd like to acknowledge for the record that Barb McCauley was one of my child's teachers. Two, three. Okay, so she was so much in my life there, I didn't even realize how long it was. And for the record, I want to say, Barb, that Barb is one of the most thoughtful and capable teachers I've ever met. Thank you, Barb. Notwithstanding anything I might be about to say. Provincial government and the BC Teachers Federation have been locked in battle for many years. This conflict is primarily about power and control of the public education system. The current episode has escalated to the level of campaigning for the next provincial election in 2013. The government has the responsibility for allocating resources to the public school system. The BCTF has a responsibility for advocating for the rights of its members. As parents, we respect these rights. Both sides, however, continue to assert that students are first, notwithstanding the primary purpose. The purpose of parent groups is to ensure that students will be represented, and that to the best of the system's abilities, students will receive a successful education. This perspective is frequently contrary to the primary purposes of both the government and the union. VCPAC is a nonpartisan organization whose primary purpose, as stated in its constitution, is to advocate for the rights and support the success of every student. We do not take anyone's side except the students. As political activities have intensified, parent groups and boards of education are being identified as either pro-government or pro-union, possibly based on the old concept that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Our children are also being drawn into the political activities, from being used as couriers to being encouraged to attend political rallies or write letters to the Minister of Education. We now see a concerted effort on the part of a group of parents with connections to one of the combatants to draw VCPAC into it as well. The group recently sent a letter to VCPAC members, which in part attempts to position the current VCPAC executive by stating that VCPAC requested that the Minister of Education eliminate limits to class size and composition. While VCPAC did indeed oppose the discriminatory aspects of Bill 33 with respect to students with special needs, we made no comment about class size and certainly did not ask for class size limits to be removed. Other statements in this letter necessitated a response from the VCPAC executive, which was sent to our members today. It has also been suggested that VCPAC supports Bill 22. There are many components of Bill 22, and most of them deal with the relationship between the government and the union. Both groups have their own resources and ability to advocate for their positions. VCPAC has taken no position on Bill 22. In closing, let me say on behalf of our members that parents in the district do not wish to have their children or their organizations used as pawns in the political battle between the government and the union. VCPAC will continue to be an unfettered advocate for students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. That concludes the community presentation portion of the agenda. We now move on to trustee reports, which are of 2-minute duration, strictly enforced this evening, trustees. And we will start with trustee Bev Horsman. Thanks.
Thank you. Tonight I thought it might be appropriate for our board to remember Peter York, who was a very long-serving trustee and who died earlier this month. Peter was first elected in 1976. That was 10 years before I was first elected. So he served the board for 23 years, from 76 to 99. He served as chair, as vice chair, and nearly always as chair of the finance, because Peter made some of his most respected contributions in terms of budget debate, and that's why I thought it was particularly appropriate to remember Peter tonight. Peter was a very visionary trustee. He was one of the first of us to recognize where the role that computers would end up playing in children's education, and he pushed the district hard to invest in computers way back when, before everybody else was talking about it. Peter also was the instigator of something that we called Education 88. Obviously, this was in 1988. I had been on the board for 2 years at that time. And Peter said, you know, there's a lot of trends in education, and we need to hear from the trend makers and the trend perceivers. And so we, as a board, hired what's his name now? The red-headed guy who does all the polling for the federal government. I forget his name now. Anyway, he's head of one of the main research firms in the country, and we invited him to come to Victoria, and we made free tickets available to parents and staff and public, and we all together sat down and looked at trends in public education, what future education might look at. Peter was someone who got the respect of both right-wing boards and left-wing boards, and in his career as a trustee, he worked with both, and both kinds of boards elected him to the executive position, either as chair or vice chair. So that was a tremendous amount of respect accorded to this man. And although he hasn't been a trustee now for a number of years, I just want his place that Elaine is occupying tonight to be remembered as Peter's former chair. And I'd just like us all to remember, as we're heading into budget, what kind of a guy Peter was and how he would fight for kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Horsman. I now call upon Trustee Norm.
Thank you. I had the opportunity today to attend the Regional Science Fair up at UVic. It is SAYS, and that is, oh my gosh, something for the advancement of youth in science, Society for the Advancement of Youth in Science. And the president, I spoke with the president, Randy Enkin, he's a geologist, and Cheryl Nye, a teacher at Gordon Head Middle School, is the vice president. And he said that throughout Canada, most of the executives are scientists, and so that he was really pleased that one of our teachers would be on the executive. Of the 6 winners that are going to the Canadian championships, we have 4 from public school. We have 3 from Lambert Park and 1 from Claremont. So I was there today and saw their projects and spoke with them, and it was just a really exceptional experience. And I'd like to also mention that having it at UVic is, I asked why, and they said it's because there is such an important engagement with the scientists that come and meet with the students, that it's very much provides an opportunity for a vision for students in terms of post-secondary schooling, and they provide many, many prizes as well. I'd like to thank the board for the financial support that they provided. It made a very big difference. I also want to just...
Sorry, just got 5 seconds.
Okay, I attended the Arbutus Music Night at UVic, and it was an outstanding performance, and it was a great opportunity to see the growth from the grade 6 level performance to the grade 8. They've done a wonderful job there.
Thank you for that, Deborah. Trustee McAvoy?
Madam Chair, and this actually relates to a provincial matter that I just wanted to draw to the board's attention, and that is that through the BC School Trustees Association, the BCST has successfully advocated and lobbied on behalf of government that the greenhouse gas emission offsets, which are being charged to school districts throughout the province and being sent to entities like Encana Resources, which I think everybody across the province thought to be an absurd public policy matter. But we, the school boards, actually have, in fact, the only public sector entity have now been cut out of that. And the monies from school boards will now go into a capital fund specifically earmarked for greenhouse gas projects. I, in my role as BCSDA president, appointed Larry Hayes from Burnaby, the chair of the Burnaby board, to work on an allocation formula for boards across the province. So it's likely over the course of time all boards will see the benefit of that fund, including Greater Victoria. Say also that fortunate that our Secretary Treasurer has actually also been asked to sit on behalf of the ASBO. In my negotiations with government, I asked that our Secretary Treasurer be involved. It made sense from a plan perspective, and unbeknownst to me, George was asked to take on that task on behalf of ASBO. So Victoria will have a presence in those discussions around the table. The other, I have to describe it as an irritant, and it's more than an irritant. It was tens of thousands of dollars. I think, George, it was the $20,000 or $30,000 for the SMART tool that we were charged. I think something in the neighborhood.
Census students.
30,000 plus for the SMART tool, which basically was charging us to evaluate the greenhouse gases that we were emitting in the district. The government has agreed to eliminate that levy, and so that money, those monies will go right back directly into our coffers. So that across the province is a substantial amount of money, and so it's all worth it because boards acted together and in concert, and so very successful. I thank the Greater Victoria Board for in fact writing on this issue as well earlier.
Thank you, Trustee McAvoy. And I now have Trustee McNally, please.
That is just such excellent news to hear about that carbon tax and the SMART tool. It was awesome work. I had the pleasure of attending the Macaulay PAC. There's just so much energy there, and I thank you. I want to thank everybody from any PAC who invites me. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to be there. I attended the Battle of the Books at Colquitt's, and that was really dear to my heart because I'm basically an addicted reader. And one of the books was by one of my favorite authors, Carl Hiaasen. I read all his young adult novels and his adult novels too. And yeah, so it was really nice to have that connection. The format was fun. It was a game show format. They did do a bigger picture little video later if teens wished to. I really have a great appreciation for the librarians and the students who showed up. I believe it was Colquitt's, Gordon Head, Rock Heights, Cedar Hill. If anybody's here that I forgot, I really apologize. It was a wonderful event.
Thank you, Trustee McNally. I'll now move on to the chair's report, and this also will be as brief as possible. So on behalf of the board, I, as one of the members of the bargaining committee, attended a bargaining session on Friday, March the 30th, 2012. On the following Monday, April 2nd and 3rd, the superintendent, secretary, treasurer, and I, along with other districts from the province, attended a conference in Richmond with the minister, deputy minister, and staff with respect to Bill 22. To finalize the Bill 22 is not, they're still taking input into that, and they're still drafting some regulations which they hope to have completed by the end of this month. We did provide some suggestions early on, and we'll certainly be doing more once we have more information on the details. Vice Chair Bev Horseman and I attended the principals meeting on April the 5th over their coffee break to listen to how things are going in their school. And later that afternoon, the Budget Advisory Committee met and developed recommendations showing the difference in what money we currently receive in our district and what we really need in order to provide the optimum educational opportunities to our students. These were forwarded to our trustees for review in preparation for discussion and debate at the May 22nd, 2012 meeting. Because we are not yet clear on how the Learning Initiative Fund is to be applied, we may need to adjust these recommendations as we receive more information from the ministry. Just this past Saturday, I had the pleasure of attending Lake Hill Little League's opening ceremonies, and I got to throw the softball. Actually, I had to practice with my son the night before. I didn't want to embarrass any of you. Thankfully, I didn't. It was a beautiful day, and the backdrop, it really was quite something, and to me, it was the epitome of school and community, because we're in the Girls' Diamond, and with Lake Hill School in the back, and with the icing on the cake with Reynolds Band playing. Now, what could be better than that? A sunny day with all these very happy children. I think 310 kids involved in their program this year. That's just so good. Anyways, it was a great opportunity, and I was happy to be there on behalf of all of you and extended our warmest congratulations and good wishes for a successful season. Thank you. That concludes my report. Our next item on the agenda is board committee reports, and at this moment I would like to pass over to Trustee Alpha, the Education Policy Development Committee meeting as chair. Catherine, please.
So, thank you, Chair. So, in the pack-up, the minutes from our meeting on April 2nd, 2012 are included, and I will leave those for people to read and move the motion that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 adopt the revised policy 6141.1, Board of Authority authorized courses. Yes, and second. Nor?
No.
Oh, we don't need a second? Okay.
Okay, I
And
second.
any discussion? Yes.
You just need to take the off out, Chair.
Do we?
Oh.
Of authority,
Not a
yeah.
major point.
Board authority.
Board authority.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, we don't need that of in there. Right. You're right.
Board authority.
Yes, it does, yes. So, any other discussion, questions? All in favor? Yeah, are we ready?
Thank you. Catherine, do you have anything further, or?
No, as I said earlier, the minutes are there, and in the interests of getting to the board, or the budget discussion, people could read the minutes if they want.
Thank you for that consideration. I'll now turn to the Chair of the Operations Policy and Planning Committee meeting. Trustee Leonard, please.
Thank you. We have just had one motion come out of our meeting, and it's an annual motion that all the stakeholder groups get together with the superintendent and talk about the upcoming professional development days for the next school year, and those are as follows. And further at the bottom, it talks about the dates of the spring break for next year as well. So the motion's on the floor.
Is there any discussion?
Call the question, and all those in favor of the motion? Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Leonard. The next item on the agenda is item D2A. This is a motion that was tabled from the February board meeting, and I move we lift it from the table and have Trustee Leonard deal with this motion.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure how long ago this was tabled, but like a month or so, quite 2 months, quite a while ago. So since then, we've had some budget information and had some stakeholder groups present to us. And so the motion that's before us now, I would like to amend. And so I'm passing around an amendment to the motion that I tabled, or that is on the table. And I'll read it and I'm passing around the information now. It's same dollar value, but just slightly reworked because of all the input that we've had, especially the April 4th budget meeting and the discussions that we've had around the table. That the Board of Education School District 61 Greater Victoria applied a $349,541 projected surplus in the following manner for the 2012-2013 budget year upon passing of the budget bylaw. That's $95,563 to add 1 FTE psychologist to help deal with the backlog of psychometric assessment in School District 61. $50,000 to be added for support services to psychologists and speech-language pathologists so that more time is made available for therapy with special needs students. And $203,888 be used for the hiring of educational assistants for support in the classrooms and students. And again, this is based on more input that we've had during the budget meetings, and we only have a projected surplus once we've passed the budget bylaw, so that's why that part is in there.
Do you have a second?
I'd like to second it and speak to the motion.
Thank you. Trustee Ferris?
I'd just like to say that I like this amendment, and I had been thinking about it before the meeting began. And the reason why I think it's appropriate is because we have heard from quite a few people in the interim since the motion was first tabled. And while $350,000 in a $170 million budget is not a huge amount of money, it's easy to kind of whittle it down to, you know, some pretty ineffectual amounts. But I think that what we have here actually targets some issues and makes a positive move towards improvement in our district. So I'm very pleased to see the $50,000 support to psychologists and speech and language therapists. And of course, the idea of dealing with that backlog I think that's something that boards would like to be able to do every year if we had the money, and certainly something which is very needed and something which has the potential to enhance our budget over time. So very pleased about the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pierce. I have Trustee McNally next.
Motion to amend, Chair. I'd like to add the words to the first clause after psychologists to help deal with the backlog of psychometric assessment for students in grades K to 3. I'd like to add those words for students in grades K to 3.
Trustee McAvoy, are you speaking to the, are you seconding the amendment or speaking to the amendment?
Well, I'll second it just to put it on the floor, sure. Yes, and I would also just like to, through you, ask a question to the mover of the motion, if I might.
Yes.
Would it be anticipated in any event that this is, when we're talking about the backlog, this is the age group we would be targeting in any event?
Trustee Alpha, we do have a speakers list, but now we're on an amendment to the amended.
So can I say that I would accept that as a friendly amendment to my motion without going through voting on that?
Okay, so that's fine. Then, Catherine, you're already on the list. I have Deborah, yourself, and then Bev. Trustee Norris.
So, as a neophyte, I'm confused here at this point because I'm seeing this motion from Trustee Leonard, and then I'm seeing the motion from Trustee Alpha. I thought that was the same amount of money. I thought that was the same envelope of money.
This is an amendment to this.
It is.
Said 100,000, didn't she? She said 100,000.
Yeah.
So
Trustee Leonard has a specific amount of the cost, and subsequent, as she explained, subsequent to her tabling the original motion, she has listened to more input, and particularly the input from the George J. teachers that you assisted. And so specifically, this is where we like to see the money go to. And yes, it is similar, but since her amendment was first on the floor,
I see.
She has the opportunity to amend that. And it looks like we're all looking at the same thing.
I did ask what the real cost was for one FTE. That's why my numbers are a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an excellent motion, and I appreciate it very much. I do, however, I would have to speak against it because I feel that the motion F1 is what I would like to see more specifically the money used for. I'd like to see the $250,000 more equally dispersed among the educational assistants, and then with our the specifically trained individuals that provide the speech and language pathology, and then our teacher of the hearing impaired has 16 schools, and she has spoken out now for a number of years, and she says, I can't get to the teaching because the only thing I can really do is manage their equipment and make sure that everything is working well in terms of from a technical point of view. So I would vote against this motion at this time because I particularly think this meets our greatest needs.
Thank you, Trustee Noor. Trustee Alpha, please.
I'm speaking in favor of this motion, but would like to, I'm a little confused of where we are in the process. Trustee Leonard, you took it as a friendly amendment for students in grades K to 3, correct?
Because I was understanding that was where the money was going to go anyhow, so why not just put it in there?
Yeah, thanks. So then I would like to add one other small amendment to the bottom piece. That's actually, it's not up there yet. To $203,888 will be used for the hiring of educational assistants for support for classroom teachers. or for support for classrooms and students, and then just add and for an additional teacher of the hearing impaired.
That's not a friendly amendment, because an additional teacher might be that whole, well, it would be most of that amount.
Okay.
So,
It'd be half.
It'd be about half. Could we say a half-time teacher for the hearing impaired?
It'd be better to put in the 50,000 just, and speech and language pathologists and hearing impaired. It'd be better to put it in the 50,000, wouldn't you? Because that's where it was before.
Right.
So what is the amendment? Is there going to be an amendment?
Yes. That the 50,000 be added for supports, that we amend the 50,000 and add another 25,000 to that. So 75,000 be added for support services to psychologists and speech and language pathologists, and an additional teacher of the hearing impaired, so that more time is made available for therapy with special needs students.
Okay, can I just interject here? The 203,000, I agree that that's where it should go, but it shouldn't be to hire a teacher. It should just be for supports for the hearing impaired. Then the staffing and the people that we pay to do that can figure out what amounts to target there rather than hiring a teacher. I would be fine with that. So at the end of number 3, where it says support for classroom teachers and the hearing impaired. So it's going in the 203,000, but we're not saying you're hiring one teacher or you're hiring a part-time teacher. Some dollars will be going there, but that's at the discretion of the senior staff.
Okay.
To figure out where it should go.
So under 203.88,
Yeah.
And
the hearing impaired.
And support for the hearing impaired.
Yeah, for classrooms and students and the hearing impaired.
And the hearing impaired. Okay.
That's fine. I don't mind. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Trustee Horseman and then Trustee McNally.
Thank you. The first comment I wanted to make is that hiring an additional teacher for the hearing impaired could actually come out of the LIF funds, which we are not going to be deciding tonight.
Right.
But that would actually, and that money is continuing money as well. This is one-time money that the district has this year, so there's an opportunity to address some of the stresses in the system, but it's a temporary addressing of those stresses. I speak in favor of the motion as a whole. I think that it's an outstanding idea to hire someone to help deal with the psychometric backlog, partly because it helps the children, obviously, to have their IEPs come through a diagnosis. Also, it would bring new funding to the district because a newly designated person would qualify the district for more funding. And for that reason, I strongly support the middle initiative as well, which is support services for the psychologists and speech and language pathologists, so they don't have to spend so much of their precious time doing the paperwork. They're able to actually work with the kids, hopefully get more kids assessed, and be available to do the work that they know and love. And not that they're not great typists, but you know, but for 1 year only, we can offer some remediation there, and then the rest of it is for educational assistance, which unfortunately that funding is for 1 year only. Hopefully there'll be ways that we'll be able to find in subsequent budgets to be able to continue that level of support, because we all know that that support is needed. But there is the opportunity to hire extra teachers and extra additional assistants, educational assistants, and other specialists in the system through the LIF funds. So this is not our only opportunity to add things back to the system.
Thank you, Trustee Horseman. Trustee McNally. So, do I think that motion is on? Let's just look at that last part. 203,000. I think I'm speaking against this amendment, but I just want to clarify what it says. 2003-888 will be used for the hiring of educational assistants for support for classrooms and students, And hearing impaired.
And
What,
hearing
and students with hearing impairments?
And
We're
Yeah.
targeting education assistance to the students with hearing impairments, right?
No, it's mixed.
Well, it isn't clear, so I can't vote on it. Well, it makes me feel mixed up.
Can either trustee Leonard or trustee Alpha
Try
clarify?
and fix that,
Well,
right?
just let me ask one additional question. Allied specialists are the ones who are going to do the programming for the students with hearing impairments, and EAs can't implement those programs until you have an allied specialist designing the program. So it just seems to me that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here in terms of, a well-intentioned motion to help students with hearing impairments.
I agree.
Melanie, do you want to clarify?
Well, just the teachers of hearing impaired are GCTA.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just, Deborah, I've got Edith, and then I'll have you, but again, I just want to get this clarified on what the amendment, so that, we're not voting on an amendment that's accepted as a friendly amendment, and then we'll deal with the whole issue. So, what was it?
Take the "and" out after classrooms and substitute a comma. Yeah.
So, yeah. So I understand what she's saying is that the three of those things, none of them are GBTA. And you're saying that the only assistance for hearing impaired students would be GBTA. There's no other assistance for them, but that's what you're needing, no?
May I clarify, Jen?
Yes.
No, what I'm saying is that it's a really good idea to have education assistance for students with hearing impairments, but the education assistants need an IEP plan designed either by GBTA or allied specialists, and I'm not completely clear if some allied specialists are part of the GBTA. I believe some are. I don't intend to make that kind of distinction. We need an allied specialist and or a teacher who's qualified to design an educational program that the EA will carry out. So that's my concern.
That's true of all special needs kids.
I understand.
I think that the way that it's written is that the experts can sort of who's the proper support, whether it's teachers or GBTA. I next have Edith, then Deborah, and then Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm a little bit confused from the initial motion to the amendment, because, when I look at what F1 is making reference to, it is very inclusive of all of the aspects that we are talking about that are on the table right now. It does include hearing impairment, and it allows a little bit of flexibility to that 350,000. So I'm wondering whether by breaking it down and being so specific, if it's going to cause more headache and heartache in terms of trying to figure it out, than to have a little bit of flexibility for it.
I don't see.
Point.
That's a good point. You can bring it up under the other.
Yeah, but I mean, it's good
Elaine, or Trustee Leonard, do you want to respond?
Sometimes when you have a large pocket of money, the people that need it don't get it because it's a larger pocket of money when you target it. Then we are addressing the support services for certain areas that maybe somehow get overlooked. And that was the reason I broke it down into 3, and I looked at the subsequent motions that were coming before us and the input that we had from the budget meeting. I'm not sure if you were at that one on April 4th, when we had some input from some teachers who this was part of their request, was to have targeted funding for certain areas, and so that's why I worded it this way.
Thank you. I'd like to call upon Trustee Nord.
I still prefer this motion because I think $50,000 for psychologists and speech and language pathologists is such a small amount of money. This other motion provides a larger pocket of money for our psychologists. I was thinking one one that would be maybe dedicated, but that would be something that district leadership would need to do. Also, I don't believe there'll be advocacy in the Learning Improvement Fund for the teacher of the hearing impaired. As an itinerant person, it's highly unlikely that she will be a priority in the consideration of those funds. So because she came and spoke, I felt it was important to represent her voice.
Thank you, Trustee North. I'll now call on Trustee Alpha and then Trustee Horsman. And then I think we'll call the question.
Okay. So my understanding from the hearing impaired teacher is that she actually isn't getting a lot of time to work with the hearing impaired students. And that concerns me. My understanding is that a lot of her time is actually being used up in repairing equipment, cleaning equipment, and paperwork. So it would seem to me that if we had a hearing impaired teacher who could actually work with the hearing impaired, part-time at least, those students would be getting some of what they need. So I think we do need to have at least a part-time teacher of the hearing impaired, because I think those students actually are pretty negatively impacted at this point by what that teacher, like the workload that teacher has, and I really don't understand why she has to repair all the equipment and clean it and do all that, unless it's just her training that makes that imperative. But given that, if we aren't going to have the hearing impaired teacher in this, then I definitely want the hearing impaired teacher in the ongoing funding, because those students do need someone to work with them. In the LIF, yeah.
Trustee Horsman, please.
Well, I'm happy to report that the numbers that Elaine used are off by $90, so we can, in fact, I didn't trust my own math, but I think it was the spirit of Peter York guiding me to add it up again, and then I asked the superintendent to double check. Anyway, we can add $90 to the last part of the motion, so that number would then be 203,978.
Okay.
Sure.
$90?
Thank you. Is there any further speakers to the motion that haven't already spoken? I'll take one more speaker and then we're going to call the question. Thanks, Deb.
So if it looks like this motion is going forward, I would make a friendly amendment to include educational assistant or teacher for support for classroom students and students that are hearing impaired, so that there would be the option.
Trustee Leonard, are you accepting another friendly?
Sure, yep.
So that will be hiring an educational assistant or
teacher support. Yeah.
And teacher.
Trustee McAvoy.
So just a sort of point on just process. There really is no such thing as a friendly amendment.
I know.
And so there can't be a one-on deal between two trustees to hold friendly amendments. I mean, it's the entire assembly's right to amend. So I didn't see any head shaking or anything at this point, and so we can let that pass. But I would appreciate in the future, if somebody has an amendment, they simply make it with a seconder, and we have a discussion brief for however wise and approve it or not.
Fine. Okay.
Thank you, Trustee McAvoy. You're absolutely correct in Robert's rules, and but we seem to be getting along so nicely, and everybody's on the same page. I was trying to be very friendly in moving this forward. Having said that, you are absolutely correct. So, seeing as all of these friendly amendments have been accepted by the mover of the motion, I now call the question.
All those in favor of the motion?
Of the amendment.
Of the amendment?
No.
No, this is, they're all friendly, so it's still a main motion. Okay, let me start again. Thank you for the help. All those in favor of the motion on the screen, please raise your hands. Wow, that's unanimous. That's awesome. Thank you very much. I'll now pass the next area of the agenda over to our Secretary Treasurer for him to take us through this next process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two reminders, or two points before we actually get into the rationale and the debates. The first is that the money that you just allocated to spend, the approximately $50,000, just a reminder that it's one-time money. We can't count on that for the future. The second is that a reminder of what we talked about, or the Associate Secretary Treasurer Deborah talked about a month or two ago, about the different way that we're forced to report this year. We still have our operating budget of $171 million, but the budget bylaw that you're being asked to approve tonight is 194. The difference between the two is that we reported back then include the trust funds. So the almost $2 million in the Learning Improvement Fund is one of those numbers. There's $6 million in school health funds, which are trust funds that we don't have any impact on.
In which? Can you say that again?
Any input to.
6 million where?
School health funds, the school funds.
School health funds, gotcha.
Those are the types of things that are included that we have to report, but we really have no impact on. Community link funding is in there. That's a trust account, and that's almost $4 million. So those are the types of things that we get it for a specific purpose. We can only spend it on those items. But in the past, we talked about having the money, what we do with it. You know all about our community link and our hot meal programs and all of that. We talk about it as individual items. But now with the changing government accounting rules, they become part of our total reported budget. And I hate those champagne bubbles, but and therefore it's a little different. It's the first time you've seen an inflated number, and that number is inflated because of government reporting rules. So we're still only, the thing that the board has the highest level of control on and the ongoing responsibility for is the $171 million school district 61 operating budget. So I thought I should explain the rationale here. We've talked about 171, we took the public through the 171, but now the bylaw that we're asking you to sign off on is 194 million. So no, it's not an adding mistake. It's all these other little funds that put together, not so little, like $4 million for community link, $6 million for school generated funds, about $1 million for the SET BC money that we get and spend on those projects, on and on, and the capital portion of that too that goes in. So, Madam Chair, we talked about the budget. We had the budget presentation last month. It's a bylaw, so we break it down into two parts. We was alluded to before. As a bylaw, we need 3 readings. So the recommended motion for the first part is that all 3 readings be given at the board this evening, and that would require unanimous approval in order for that to be in effect.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Trustee North.
Thank you. So thank you for that explanation, because I was wondering about that. I wondered, to the Secretary Treasurer, the statement of financial information. It's approximately almost $68 million. The contracting for goods and services, in our previous budget. So
It's our previous fiscal year, last
yeah.
June 30th.
So I'm wondering if there's any forecasting done for that for this year, and what kind of breakdown ratio is there between operating and capital?
Excuse me, Trustee Nor, we're on the motion, and that your questions aren't, the motion is whether we're going to have 3 readings tonight.
Oh, and then after that, do I get to ask my questions?
You can answer them after that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Or ask them, and hopefully the Secretary Treasurer will. Trustee McAvoy, did that take care of things for you? Okay. So we're on the motion to give all 3 readings at the board meeting. Trustee McNally.
So I don't suppose I'll surprise anybody, but by saying that I speak against this motion. First of all, I think that 3 readings of a budget at one meeting are, again, I'm going to speak to process. Perhaps I'm overly concerned with process, but I would like to see it spread out over more meetings. And secondly, in order to satisfy the discussion about mootness for an upcoming motion, I will vote against this motion.
Are there any further speakers? Are you speaking on the motion, Trustee Nor?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I've thought about this, and I know the process in the past. So it's a dilemma, because if we don't have all 3 readings tonight, as I've observed in the past, there's never been a dedicated period of time that was of any significance to reflect and check back with partner groups or to consider things. Instead, there's a poll vote that's done through the email, and my understanding is that all votes regarding public funding should be done at the board table. So if the process is going to be to have a poll vote tomorrow, then I would vote for all 3 readings tonight, because I feel it would be the better of the 2 choices in order to do it in full view of the public.
Thank you, Trustee Nor. Are there any further comments? Trustee Ferris.
Well, I just wanted to say I respect both of the opinions that have just been offered, but I also feel that we have one of the best budget processes that I know of in British Columbia at our board. We start this budget process the day after this document gets approved, and we start looking at next year. And so a long time has been spent deliberating on this budget, and I would add to that additionally what we embark upon is effectively a strategic planning process, which begins at the beginning of our school year. And it's through that process that we eventually come to a decision about how we allocate resources, and then eventually we arrive at a place where we actually have some numbers in front of us, and so we're able to say, well, we will be able to allocate these resources or we won't. And as we move closer to the provincial budget, we begin to get a better picture. So I believe that when we get to this meeting, this final meeting, we really have been very fully informed, that we have received a great deal of public input, and that I don't think that this legal proceeding, which requires us to have 3 readings, impairs us in any way. So I have very much confidence in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ferris. Trustee Laura Kalunga?
I too, I'm concerned about the poll vote, so I'll wait to hear the answer to the question that Deborah has raised.
I don't know if it was a question so much as that is the process we need. Perhaps the Secretary Treasurer. Well, I can speak to, we need 3, if we are to pass the bylaw tonight in 3 readings, it has to be unanimous. If we don't, we do another one. It does not have to be in public. but it has to be reported out to the public. And it doesn't require unanimous decision. It's just the majority of trustees. So it may be delayed by a day or so. If you would like to add anything,
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, the motion to allow all 3 readings in one evening must be unanimous. After that, the decision on the budget itself is by simple majority.
And to confirm, that would be on a poll vote over email.
Well, if all 3 readings were agreed to tonight, it could be a 9-0, 8-1, whatever to go through, and you wouldn't need the poll vote. If it's voted down by one person saying, no, we're not going to give unanimous approval, then tonight the recommendation will be that we'll have 2 readings tonight. And the 2 readings tonight would simply be carried by simple majority vote. And then the tradition has been to then submit a poll vote, and once again, that would be the 3rd reading. And the poll vote, as the chair has said, would be another simple majority, and that would be reported out at our next public meeting.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question that the 2012-2013 annual budget bylaw be given all 3 readings at the board meeting on April 16, 2012. All those in favor, please. Okay. Those against? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Then the next motion is that the Board of Education, School District Number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the 2012-2013 annual budget bylaw in the amount of $194,366,227, and that it be read a first time the 16th day of April 2012, and read a second time the 16th day of April 2012. And that's it for tonight. That's the 2 readings.
Yeah, moved. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this?
So now, about the budget now.
You can, yes, this is where you can ask your questions if you wish, Trustee Moore.
And Trustee
Morgan.
Thank you. So back to my point about the contracting of goods and services. If we're looking to try to find more funding for the classroom, is there an analysis that's done of this statement of financial information around, in terms of the operating budget, the line items that fall under operating budget that might be a one-time, and therefore we wouldn't be looking at this almost $68 million this year?
The $68 million in that statement of financial information is based on last year's actual expending to all our suppliers. I don't have it in front of me, but that would also include our $6 or $8 million worth of utility costs,
right.
All our benefit costs, all our legal costs. Those are our actuals. It's based upon the actuals comparison to our budget that we create the new budget. That's how the budget is built, by reviewing what we spent, what we haven't spent, and what can we do to, when we took you through the budget in the actuals and the adjustments in March, February, and the update for the year, that's what we do. We compare the budget to what we've spent, and that's how we develop the budget. That's what we have in our $171 million.
So
we don't say, does the ABC roofing company going to be cut by $6,000? We say, do we need, in the facilities program, are we going to do these number of roofs?
okay, I'm thinking more operating in terms of into the classroom. So is there forecasting then, looking at that almost 68 million to see?
That is our operating budget. Those are actuals. As I said,
Yeah.
we use the actuals to compare to what's in the school budget, whether it's textbooks, whether it's whatever. If we have money left over, we bring it to the board in February to be used to move forward.
So it's in February that you do a review of that?
Well,
Okay.
throughout the year, we're doing it, and in
Doing-
February, the
okay.
board gets to see all that work.
So, does is there specific money tied to the achievement contract? Do we look at specific funding to support the 3 goals?
There is a certain amount, but off the top, it's such a small amount that I don't recall. Do you recall?
So,
It's-
so where does the funding come from for the achievement contract then? From each school level budget or from learning initiatives?
When we create the achievement contract, most of that work is done off the side of the associate superintendent's desks. They do the comparisons. They work with the schools. The school principal works with their PACs. They don't get paid for doing that work.
So
There might be some additional funds spent on printing, but it's
Right.
small amounts.
So would it be possible to get an accounting of the money that was spent last year on the achievement contract?
Probably not, because as I say, most of the work is done on the corner of somebody's desk. I can't determine how much money Sherry Bell's expenses are at 6 o'clock at night unless.
Well,
or
I'm
the
not saying for
principal
her,
at
I'm
8
saying
o'clock.
for initiatives, programs.
So that's, I
Yeah.
mean, if there's anything coded specifically to that, because it'd be a large amount
Yeah.
of several $1,000s, we could research it, but I don't believe that I would.
That's not been something, that's
I
not
don't recall
been,
any past budgets having a byline for achievement contracts.
It would
Something
be
to
supplies
consider.
or
Yes.
something.
Can I just say on a
Trustee
point,
McAvoy,
I'm not
please.
sure what the point is, a clarification, but I'm not sure that I completely understand Trustee North's question, because it seems to me that everything we do in our district is focused on those goals that we've set for ourselves. You know, whether it's professional development, whether the teachers in the classroom that work very hard to ensure our kids are literate, and issues of social responsibility. That's something that views everything we do in every school, and to say we spend X amount, I mean, to me, that thing runs through the entire budget. So, but I'm not sure that was the intention of your question.
I understand what you're saying. I was asking more specifically for specific initiatives, not just the system, funding system at every school with those goals in mind. So part of this is, of course, I felt that it would be very, very important as a group of trustees to sit down and have some working meetings around the budget. And there was not that will. And as a result, I had the opportunity to sit and meet with the superintendent for about 6 hours, and it was very helpful. But it was one step in what I consider to be the broader necessity of trustees as a group sitting down and creating some priorities for the year, and then working with the district leadership team, bringing them forward. So that is why I'm asking some of these questions now that I didn't get an opportunity to share and have that conversation as a full board in reviewing the budget. I have just a couple of other questions. For instance, I believe, I'm not quite sure whether it's this year or last year, that we get approximately $17,400,000 for our vulnerable learners. And I wondered, how much more do we put into those specific categories of level 1, 2, 3, and I think it's also Aboriginal education, I'm not sure, beyond the money that the ministry gives us?
You asked that question and I responded today, including copying all trustees. That type, if you're talking about our special needs students, that information is not available any longer. We spend all the money in class 1, 2, and 3 special needs grants for special needs students.
Yes.
If that's a $17 million, we spend that. All the other previously defined special needs are now rolled into the per pupil grant, and therefore it's buried into our total receipts and our total spending.
So would the principal of special education have some sort of running total of what is required beyond that 17 million?
At our trustee orientation meeting, we took you through the total dollar amounts that the special ed principal is responsible for.
Yeah, that was a breakdown that didn't seem to correspond with what I'm asking. For instance, I was speaking to a chair of another board, and she said that they put $2 million extra into special education each year. So that's sort of what I'm trying to get to. Is
well,
I'm certain there must be
12
more.
years ago, when we had the government come in and do an audit, 13 years ago, back in 2000, 2001, the province came in and reviewed what we were spending in various areas because the board was looking at submitting a deficit budget, which they were requesting government approval on, and government approval was based upon coming in and sending their audit team in with recommendations. And at that point, I believe it was either 18 or 22% we were spending more than what we were being given in special education funding. Since that time, the waters got muddied and we can no longer determine the additional amounts.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And just one more question. So for I have several questions, but I know that this is running long. So for instance, in the international school, it says $272,000 for school supplies and $46,000 for visa or bank charges. What kind of school supplies is that?
Part of our funding formula for the international program is not only do we provide one additional teacher for every 18 students, but we also supply the schools with supply money for each student that they take.
So is that for books and textbooks and
the same as we provide for a normal student entering our school?
Okay, all right. So it's all of that funding, and so the bank charges $46,000. Does that make sense?
When you're taking funds transferring across the world, electronic funds transfers, currency exchange rates.
That's it. Okay.
So there's a fee off the top of every credit card transaction.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Moran, just to clarify your concern about the groupings of the trustees to get together. We do have these debates, we have to have them in public, so to have them offside would not fit into what we could have, but if there's another way that we can do it to make it easier, a number of years ago, moved a motion to change things, to start things earlier, and I think as Tom and Michael and George have said, we're constantly in budget, but we can look at, perhaps there's a suggestion you can think of that you'd like to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any Edith, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to vote against the motion, and the reason why I'm going to vote against it is because our budget that we received at our budget meeting was $170,675,466, and not the $194 million that George is now just giving us. And I think that as trustees, that if we're really looking at that extra $24 million, we need to know what that is, and not just blanketly agree that yes, it's a mix of this and mix of that. So for me, I don't feel comfortable. I want to make sure that what I'm voting on, that $194 million, I have it listed in front of me. I understand what it's for, what it's allocated for. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have a structural deficit of $8,289,459. That's a structural deficit. And yes, it may not impact us this year, but it certainly may next year, and the year after, and the year after. And my third reason for not voting to agree with the bylaw is the needs budget that was presented that the staff, the leadership staff, and some of the trustees worked on was that we need another $48 million. And if that's the case, then we obviously have to say that some of our students are not getting the services they need, especially our most vulnerable learners. And I believe that we have to stand up and fight for public education to make sure that it's fully funded so that no student is left behind. And for those reasons, I'm voting against it.
Thank you, Trustee Laura Kaminga. Trustee Alpha, and then Nora.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also going to vote against the budget, and for the reasons that Trustee Lauren Kahunga brought forward. I think our needs budget really does address the real dollars that we need to meet the learning needs of our students in our classroom. And if you add that up, it comes to $242 million, and we're putting together a budget of $194 million. So I think we're $48 million short. So I'm voting against it.
Thank you, Trustee Nora, and then I'm going to add myself to the speakers list.
Yes, I will be voting against this budget too. We've had 10 years of chronic underfunding in our schools, and we have a situation that is very, very tragic for many, many students. In School District 61, we have the largest secondary classes in the province, and we have over 327 classes with 4 or more students with IEPs. And this creates a situation where we are not able to provide for the learning needs of all those students. And it has a direct impact on students' self-esteem, students' sense of self, and it has an impact on families and our community. I do not believe it's in the best interest of our families and communities and children to support a budget that is so woefully inadequate. When I was looking at the needs budget, and I thank everyone for their work on this, I see that there's so much more that still isn't even on there. And we don't have, we had teachers come and talk about library funding, and we've had parents come and speak about the gifted students, and it doesn't even address QP 382. Technology, we have a lot of desire to have more technology in our classrooms, but it takes a lot of funding to bring specialists in, to teach teachers, to set everything up. I don't believe that was addressed in the needs budget. And we actually need small classes for some students. We have a variety of vulnerable students who would thrive in smaller classes part of the day, and that used to be part of our funding formula. We had that for these children, and we don't have it anymore. So for that reason, because of the deleterious effects of the cuts for our children, I will not be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Trustee Nora. Just to be, I'll try and be very brief with my comments. This is the money that we have received. This is the form in which we are obliged to the oath that we took to follow the School Act. I don't think there's any one of the 9 of us that disagree that we certainly need more funding. We are taking steps, as you know. I've approached the Mary Ellen Trapella Fond. I'm hoping her mandate may change to include special needs. I don't know if that will, but I will be attending a meeting on the 24th with her special needs group. Having said that, we were really clear when we sent out that budget that it was up for discussion and debate, and there was still some outstanding information that we didn't have. We didn't, for instance, incorporate the LIF, which, mind you, is only about $2 million out of the 48. However, the plan is, and we had discussed this previously as a board, that we would send in a supplemental document, and we wanted it to make sense. It would be like constructive criticism rather than just saying, government, we don't have enough money. We want to say, government, we don't have enough money to give optimal educational opportunities for all of our students, and here's exactly why. This is what we need, here's the cost, and they would actually have something rather than the restoration budget that we submitted a couple of years ago that was just a number of numbers and didn't take into consideration the changes that have happened over the last 11 years. So we will have an opportunity to discuss and debate and be able to send a letter to the minister. And I think that that will have an impact. Having said that, this is the amount of money that we have to deal with. We're doing it with the best we can. And I will be supporting this. And we did talk about the change where we had to include those trust fund monies, such as Community Link and the rest of it, into the budget money. So it's not really a surprise, I don't think. But having said that, I will be supporting this motion for the reasons I've spoken about. Thank you.
Michael?
And then, Tom, and then Deborah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think in some respects, there's not really a difference of opinion about the fact that, and I want to take the underfunding question back more than 10 years, because those of us who have been around this table for a longer period of time certainly have seen those graphs going back to, I mean, you could take them back further, but we used to look at them in terms of like 1990, 91, and there were some particularly difficult years in the early 90s. So this is not particular, I would suggest, to any particular administration. This has been a longer-term problem in boards, not just here, but across the province, have had to deal with. So maybe the question is one of strategy versus one of opinion on these questions. I think it's been characterized in some avenues as a divided board. I don't believe it is a divided board on this question at all. And if this evening is any indication, I think there's an indication that there is widespread agreement on most issues. And I suspect by the time we are through and people want to do an analysis of the votes we now have, they'll see that the vast majority of issues that trustees are together on. That said, about a strategical difference, and maybe it's the way that we approach these things, I fully believe that trustees need to be fully engaged in the distribution and allocation of the monies that are given to us. And to that end, I want to say that I'm very grateful for all of my colleagues around the table tonight, all of them. Particularly, everybody participated in the discussion around the $350,000 as a contribution to this budget, and I think that was very much appreciated. Deborah asked some very good questions. I know you spent some time with the superintendent. Others of us have spent our own time looking through those numbers, raising questions. I also want to thank the parents and teachers and support staff and others who came. And there weren't a large number of people who came to our roundtable meetings, but those who did take the time, it was really appreciated. The presentation, for example, made at the last meeting by those teachers from George J., I think made a very deep impression on trustees. It's been seen and reflected in this discussion tonight. It will be, I think, reflected in the discussion around the LIF as well. So this budget doesn't provide for any cuts. It's a balanced budget, obviously, in accordance with the School Act. And maybe this needs to be, maybe it's too obvious to be stated, but I think it does need to be stated. We need to pass a budget in order to have money to be able to pay our teachers, our support staff, all of the people who work, the wonderful people that work in our system, who educate our kids. In some world, if the government didn't step in to do anything, and we simply threw up our hands and said we couldn't muster enough votes to pass any kind of a budget because we would want to hold out for something else, we would have massive layoffs come June. We would not be able to, we would not get money without a budget. And so that is obviously a place that none of us want. I can't imagine any of us around this table would ever want to put our staff and others in the uncertainty, and most importantly our kids, in that position come forward to next September. So I would also say that it's really important that we, even through difficult times, we are elected to make decisions on behalf of the community about how we allocate our money. We fight for more money, we advocate for more money, but those monies we do have, we advocate as a community, or on behalf of our community. And The reality is, and this is something I have to say, I was, if I may say, schooled on this some dozen years ago. Trustee Horsman is smiling at me because this is a discussion we had before I became a trustee, if I might say, about the strategy around whether boards vote down budgets. The reality is that, of course, that would result in what happened in the 80s. And coincidentally, today I actually had a discussion with the trustee. He's still a trustee. He's been around for many years, going back into the 70s. Not unlike those around this table who strongly believe and advocate for kids and strongly advocate for more funds. His take on it, he's a person who lives in the Lower Mainland, he said those communities that, and was very involved in DCSTA, those communities that went through their boards being terminated, it took those communities years to recover from that. And because, in a way, in addition to what happened in the trauma in the community, those communities were left out without any voice around the table about how money are to be distributed. Now, I take that role seriously. I believe we make a difference. I believe trustees make a difference. I believe in everything we do here we make a difference in how we allocate those monies. Sometimes not enough money, in fact, most times not enough money, but we make a difference. And we have to be here on behalf of the public to make those decisions. So I would strongly urge all of my colleagues around the table to support this budget unless there's something within this budget that you believe can be improved or changed. And I listened carefully to Trustee Nora, and it may be through her examination that she had, and I'd be happy to sit here longer. She had other constructive suggestions about how we can allocate monies. At the same time, we will continue to work together as a board, and we'll be undivided in our advocacy for more funding, better funding for our system. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee McAvoy. Trustee Ferris, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't reiterate much of what Trustee McAvoy has said, but I'd like to think of it, perhaps phrase it in a slightly different way, and say that you might say that we, as school trustees, have two sorts of obligations. And one of those obligations is to provide an educational program for students with the money that we are allocated, irrespective of whether we think it's enough or we don't. And that other obligation, which I think everybody around the table takes to heart, is that obligation to advocate for students. And it's in that respect that we have addressed our needs budgets and of course, really for us, I think probably the sky's the limit to what we want for our kids. There's no question about that. And so I respect what each of the speakers has said with regard to whether they will support this budget or not. But I also want to emphasize that passing this budget now is important. Waiting till the last minute when the government will actually come and bring the news is not a great idea. Because in effect, by passing this budget, we have the confidence to move forward, to do our staffing for next year. We have the confidence to be able to place children in seats in September, that everybody will be ready to go. I think to delay the process does nobody any good, but I do appreciate the thoughts expressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ferris. Trustee Nora, please.
Thank you. I believe I was elected by many people in the community who are so concerned about the underfunding in our schools. I would hope that through my negative vote, my vote not in support of this budget, that it would rally the parents and the community to respond. And I would request a meeting with the Minister of Education to sit down and be accountable and to those in our community and explain the needs budget. And this is what we need. This is essential. This is absolutely necessary to restore the type of quality education for our students. Right now, we have a situation where we have this growing shift in our district between our have and have-not schools, and this is another aspect of this funding crisis. And we have, PACs that can generate all sorts of money, and their libraries are full of books, and then we have PACs that, the socioeconomic demographics are such that these schools are hurting. They're hurting terribly. And we have students with learning disabilities that used to have specific money attached so that they could have the type of learning support they needed. And they have just blended in to a classroom situation with teachers often that are overwhelmed. So parents know this, many people in the community know this. I feel that I'm a voice at the table for so many people that want to hear me express this and act on their behalf. And I would just conclude by saying that in the School Act, in Section 111, it does require boards to submit a budget in which expenditures do not exceed revenue, but the School Act also says in Section 65, Part 1, a board is responsible for the improvement of student achievement in the school district. And I cannot pass this budget in all good conscience when it is going to result in serious neglect of many of our students.
Thank you, Ms. Now, Trustee Leonard. Well, listening to the discussion around the table, I would surmise and put forward that the alternative would be worse. After what you just said, the alternative to not passing the budget today would be worse. In 1999, we had a relatively small deficit. We had a $1.5 million deficit. We chose to ask the minister for some help and had him send in an auditor to help us because what we deemed would be cuts would be just unconscionable that we could do that. And the cuts that he proposed within the realm of our deficit were far worse than what we had surmised. What his cuts would be far different than what the board would have chosen. And subsequently down the line, there are districts that have no daytime custodians. We still do. So the choices around this table are based on what our district wants, what our district needs, what we think is best for our district. If you choose to not submit a budget at this point in time and only do a needs budget, the government waltzes in, fires the board, and they put forward whatever they want to balance the budget, and it does not meet the needs of the district. Strings program will be gone. Daytime custodians will be gone. Choices that our district thinks and the trustees around the table have thought were important over the last years will be gone, and they will just come in and they'll probably close some schools. They'll say you have too many schools, there's not enough students there, they can walk, they will make choices that we would not consider good choices for our district. So I am supporting a needs budget in conjunction with our budget. I support a strongly worded letter to the minister, and I still support a meeting with the minister. All the things that you would like to do, we can still do after we've passed the budget, because we haven't made any cuts in this budget. I would suspect if the minister came in, the first thing he's going to look at is $8 million worth of cuts to give us a balanced budget, because we don't have one. We have a structural deficit. That's $8 million worth of staff that he's going to look at cutting to get us to a balanced budget, because we don't have one. We have a false balanced budget tonight. And the fact that I even voted to spend money that we don't have for next year is a big step for me. I don't usually do that. Every other year I have moved this money to the next year's budget to cover a projected deficit. So the fact that I even voted for this tonight is a big step. So I'm asking the board to vote for a balanced budget, and I will fully support your needs budget to go along with it that the committee has worked on, and that's a step for me too. I didn't used to support needs budgets. I still think that that's our advocacy based with our responsibility to our staff and students in the district. So I'm willing to meet in the middle, and I'm hoping that everybody else will too.
Thank you very much, Trustee Leonard, and good show of compromise. Trustee McNally.
Well, thanks for those interesting points, Trustee Leonard. I realize they're all true, and if George Abbott or any of his henchmen were to come in here and make $8 million worth of cuts, I think he would be demonstrating really the disaster that he's visited on public education here in this district, so I dare him to do that. If anybody has a problem with my ethics around my decision to not support this budget, it was published in the Times Colonist. You may have read it there. If not, I have a few copies if you cared to read it. I really believe we've been put in a position in which we cannot ethically uphold both parts of our responsibilities, so I'm making a choice tonight.
Thank you, Trustee McNally. Are there any further speakers to the motion? Seeing none, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor of that the Board of Education School District Number 61, Greater Victoria, 2012-2013 annual budget bylaw in the amount of $1,994,366,227 be read a first time on the 16th day of April 2012, read a second time the 16th day of April 2012. All those in favor? So let's see if we have. All those opposed, please raise your hands. Thank you. The motion is carried and so ordered. In view of the motion that was passed just prior to motion D2A, which combined pretty much, well, combined F1, F2, F3, F4.
I withdraw my motions. I withdraw my motion.
Thank you very much.
Point of order, Chair. Do we have reports from trustee representatives, or are you carrying?
My apologies. We do. It was at the bottom of the page. We'll move back and then move forward, which generally works. Which trustees have reports?
Well, I do, Chair.
I think that's obvious. Thank you. So, Trustee McNally.
Yeah, I would just like to, I'd like to report that I'm going to the Healthy Saanich Schools Committee on Thursday, and as I said before, I pretty much dreaded going to the first one, but I'm looking forward to going to this one. That's very interesting, and there are some, I think, long-term tie-ins with our public education system, so I look forward to finding out more about how we can work together with them. I'm the BCPC rep to the Representative Council, so I'll be going over to that around the 24th, and it's also BCSTA AGM, so I'll be present for that as well in Vancouver.
Thank you, Trustee McNally. Are there any further trustee reports? Seeing none, we'll move forward. And we'll move to F5 under new business notice motions. And Trustee McNally, please.
Thanks, Chair. To open on this motion, I have about a 2-minute statement here. I actually timed myself, so I won't run on. I'd like to simply provide you with a primitive visual aid here. This is a board production, and you'll see the orange part is the discrepancy between what we're given and what we actually put out there, mostly for kids with special needs. This can't go on. I think it's pretty apparent from this graph. It's just going to get worse. So here's my prepared statement. Thank you, Trustee McAvoy. Public education, also, and thank you to any students who showed up. I don't know if there are any that expressed an interest in coming. We have some high school students. That would be awesome if they did. Thanks to all who showed up and stuck around. Public education has been systematically underfunded since 2001. I'm not going to tell you anything new here, but I'm going to say it anyway. Corporate profits have increased significantly over the last decade, but taxes collected from these corporations have steadily declined. At no time in the last 30 years have corporations contributed less in tax revenue as a proportion of their earnings to British Columbia, where corporate profits are at historic high levels. BC corporation profits are expected to hit a new record high of $31.3 billion by 2015, while over the last decade, BC's corporate income tax rate was repeatedly cut from 16.5% to 10% today. These corporate tax cuts led to a loss of provincial revenues of at least $7.7 billion over the last decade and will lead to the loss of an additional $8.8 billion in revenues by 2015. These numbers don't include an estimated $500 million annually in cuts to taxes on banks and capital. These cuts have had the effect of removing billions of dollars from public education and public services in general. The staff and previous boards at School District 61 have done good work in maintaining the services they have maintained, but there is no more to be cut. Compliance with arbitrary Ministry of Education directives in regard to submission of balanced budgets in the context of chronic underfunding and increasing offloads of rising expenses to school districts has to stop here, and it has to stop now.
Thank you, Trustee McNally. Is there a seconder to the motion? And is there discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And all of those opposed? Thank you. The motion is defeated. The next motion is Trustee Norris on the letter to the Minister of Education. Trustee Norris, please.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. We've had an excellent presentation, I believe, on the rationale for asking for a repeal of Bill 22. It is not in the best interest of our children. It has eliminated anything to provide accountability, and the process of vying for the small amount of money for our students is just inadequate. It is unconstitutional, and it is just in that it is almost identical and even more destructive than Bill 28. And so I feel that it is not in the best interests of our children, our families, or our community. And so I ask you to consider all the trustees ask you to consider writing a letter to repeal Bill 22.
Thank you, Trustee Norris. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Is there a discussion? Trustee Alpha, then Trustee McNally.
Thank you. I think Bill 22 is probably one of the most concerning pieces of legislation I've ever seen. Pieces of it seriously undermine our democratic rights as citizens. And I just really am amazed that this government thought that it was okay when the Supreme Court of BC says you have to do something about Bill 27 and 28 because it's unconstitutional. What they decide to do about Bill 27 and 28 is, well, they'll repeal it and just put it into Bill 22 and put that into place. It's like flipping the bird at the Supreme Court of BC, and that really bothers me. But enough said on that. The other piece that I'm wanting to bring forward is that the Vancouver School Board has written a very strong letter. West Vancouver School District has written a strong letter. The Caribou Chilcotin has written a strong letter. And the District Parent Advisory Council of the Vancouver School District has also written a strong letter. Those are just 4 examples. And due to the lateness of the hour, I'm not going to read the full letters, but I am going to read some quotes that I found really quite inspiring from West Vancouver. We believe that the professionalism, courage, commitment, passion, and sheer hard work of our teachers has been integral to our district becoming one of the highest achieving districts in the province and a model for the kind of innovative change in teaching and learning that the Ministry of Education is proposing. We believe that the invaluable work of teachers is one of the vital tenets of a democratic society, Nothing is more important to the health and welfare of our children, and nothing is more important to our society than a strong, progressive public education system. I imagine the teachers in West Vancouver must have felt really supported, and they must have felt really good hearing that being said by their board. Vancouver School Board. We support and respect the rights of employees to freely and collectively bargain the terms of their employment, and we ask you to do the same. The Vancouver School Board also passed a resolution calling for the appointment of an independent mediator. The mediator needs to be able to proceed without the parameters set by the government that predetermine the outcome of the process. The Vancouver School Board strongly opposes the bill's provision for providing compensation to teachers who accept oversized classes. Paying off teachers for working in overcrowded classes creates poor learning conditions, which is a betrayal of students and harmful to the quality of our school. Bill 22 provides no solutions to the flaws in Bill 33. And then further on, Vancouver School Board supports the Vancouver District Parent Advisory Council's request for the removal of Bill 22. I thought those were excellent points made by Vancouver School Board. Caribou Chilcotin. Boards of education in BC work with teachers every day, and as employers, they must resolve problems as they arise with fairness and integrity. The approach the provincial government is taking with this dispute is eroding the relationship between boards and teaching staff. Under the labor relations model the provincial government is using, the boards are responsible for all aspects of employment except compensation. There is a disconnection between boards, government, and teachers, which is creating dysfunction in the relationship between the partners involved in education. The responsibility for a fair and appropriate resolution to the dispute with teachers falls squarely on the provincial government's shoulders. The province is the authoritative body and must find a way to resolve the situation. The current banter is unproductive, and the struggle for favorable public opinion is tiresome. So not a strong letter, but certainly showing their disapproval of where we are at. And I think when I read these letters and the pieces that are in them, the teachers in those districts, I feel, must be feeling really valued by their board. And I would hope that we could take the same sort of stance and show our teachers that we do value the hard work that they put in every day. So I'm speaking strongly in favor of the letter to the Minister of Education that Trustee Knorr has asked for in this motion.
Thank you, Trustee Alpha. I have Trustee Lori Kahunga and then Trustee McNally.
Thank you. I remember not long ago that it was Anti-Bullying Day. And when I took a look at Bill 22, I thought it was just being a bully. And that's why I wrote the letter to Minister Abbott. I finally received a response from him a couple of days ago, because I really felt that what he was doing to teachers and to our public education system was being a bully. That he was taking away the rights of teachers, and yet on one hand, we say as a school board that we protect the rights of our students, that we teach them how not to bully. We teach them how to stand up to bullies. And so for those reasons, I'm asking that people please consider, the trustees, please consider around the table to standing up, to taking a stand against another bully, to taking a stand and standing up for our employees, for taking a stand and standing up for our students. Because I know that when our employees' emotional well-being is at task, and I certainly saw it on the 3-day strike when I went out and talked to many of our teachers, that it will ultimately affect our students. And for those reasons, I believe that we should all seriously look at asking the government to repeal Bill 22, that we actually sit down and be able to have a conversation and be able to stand up and fight for public education, which includes the rights of our employees and the rights of our students.
Thank you, Trustee Lauren. Trustee McNally.
Vote in favor,
To all those who have spoken in favor of this motion. Bill 22 makes a mockery of collective agreements, while spokespersons for the government accuse employee groups of not bargaining in bad faith. That's cynical in the extreme. Bills 27 and 28 were enacted about 10 years ago. The government waited 10 years for unconstitutional laws to make their way through the court. Meanwhile, acting as if that were the well and good reality. It seems to me that the way this government works is to simply pass a law that quite possibly could be unconstitutional and is certainly expedient, and they know they've got 10 years. The wheels of justice grind slowly. So, for all the reasons stated, I'll be voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Trustee McNally. Trustee Ferris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not be supporting the motion. And while I agree with many of the points that have been made by everybody so far, the one point that I don't agree with is that the notion that if I somehow don't support this motion, I don't support the people who work in our district. And to be honest, don't think that's a fair thing for you to say about me. But nonetheless, there it is. The fact is that the board has written to the ministry and has requested an independent mediator to settle the dispute. I think there's no question about what boards across the province believe in that process. We have consistently requested that the ministry provide adequate funding for students, particularly those with special needs and those who have special requirements in the classroom, and to alleviate teachers who clearly are under pressure for that very reason. Having said that, it's the government makes the decision about how to allocate money. I'm not Treasury Board. I have absolutely no impact on Treasury Board. I can write to the minister and ask him, please put more money into education. But my job is to provide an educational program. And as far as Bill 22 is concerned, this board hasn't even had the opportunity, because the regulations haven't been set yet, we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and see what the implications are for classrooms. I suspect that the implications, direct implications for classrooms, are perhaps not anything like what it's been suggested that they are. I feel that as well, I've been a trustee for a long, long time. I know of no government, absolutely no government, that since I've been a trustee, that has not legislated the teachers back to work for whatever reasons. Every single contract dispute has been settled in this way. So while I don't think that's a great process, that's the process that we've got. And for me, as a trustee, what is my job? I have to look and see what my job is and do that job, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Trustee Ferris. Trustee McAvoy?
Just quickly, first of all, the argument, and it's not the first time it's been made, and I think it's, I don't think it behooves us as a board, colleagues, to talk. If you don't support my argument, that must mean you are, and it follows, whatever that is. Of course, everybody in this room strongly supports the work that our teachers do. It's not necessarily the case that everything the teachers, union or the government might do or whatever is something, but because, we don't take a position at this time on that, that somehow we don't support this group or not. I would say on Bill 22, this discussion is not over. We have a discussion coming up, I believe, I'm not sure if I got the date right, April the 23rd. In which there is more to come. There's more around regulations. I think as a board we have an obligation to understand what those issues are. and then we can move forward from there and make some decisions. But this is, as it was the last time on Sir Oaks, I think this is premature and involves some more discussion by the board. I hope that we're all, and I trust we'll all be part of that in a short number of days.
Thank you, Trustee McAvoy. Are there any further speakers to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the questions. All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? And the motion is defeated. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is H, public disclosure of in-camera items. Mr. Secretary Treasurer.
We have nothing to disclose from any camera. Motion to adjourn.
Just prior to adjournment this evening, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Secretary Treasurer and Associate Finance Director, Debbie Mazer, and their teams for all the work that they put in, particularly the mountains. I am going to single you out, Deborah. In addition to putting together the budget information, but also pulling together the information that the Advisory Budget Committee is relying on to bring forward and has sent to all of you. You all have done a great job, and please pass along our thank you to all of the staff members for the work that you've done and continue to do on behalf of the board and the district in seeking to find ways to save money to put into the classroom. With that, I think we'll motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.